Luke Wilson, welcome to Q.
Thanks for having me on Q.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How's it going?
Not too bad. You play Father Greg, a priest in Guest of Honor, Adam McGowan's new film. What made you want to get on board with this one?
Well, I mean, I'm always looking to do kind of new things and maybe things that aren't what people might be used to seeing me in. And when I'd read the script, I mean, of course, was familiar with Adam's work, and I think just when me and my brothers and friends were getting started in the business, I think that's when I think The Sweet Hereafter was coming out right about then too, kind of 96, 97. And so had always been aware of him and gone to his movies. And then reading the script, I mean, for some reason it was just kind of right up my alley, and I just loved the idea of kind of this character that was a food inspector that David Thewlis plays. It seemed like kind of a Raymond Carver type character where, you know, you go to movies and you get used to seeing people play, you know, a doctor or a policeman or a fireman, these kind of
A Spider-Man.
Exactly. Thank you. These exciting jobs. But then you think about someone that's, you know, a food inspector and, you know, living in Los Angeles. I'd moved there from Dallas, Texas, and I'd never seen grades on the windows of restaurants, and I always thought that was so interesting. And, you know, you'd see an A and think, oh, okay, great, that's great. And then you'd see a B, and I'd think, well, a B in school, it's not that really, that's not a bad grade. But then for a restaurant, it's not a good grade. You know, it can mean like vermin infestation.
I love when he takes the meat thermometer and kind of plunges it into sauce.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't really know what.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't know what I took for granted. Like, there's someone out there doing that for me.
Well, I'm sure you've like been through a few kitchens where you think, gosh, is that standing water? Yeah. Okay, well, anyhow.
I guess this is a ratatouille situation.
Yeah.
I guess that's okay.
Is that a broth or are you?
Is that supposed? Spit in the broth? Is that a? It's for flavor. But you've been around a little while. Is there still stuff to learn? Did you learn anything new from working with Adam as a director?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, you're right. Have been around a while, and I think just maybe the way I started making movies, just time was always such an issue. Like, you know, we had to finish this scene in order to get to that scene, and we had to make sure to get the scene done before the sun went down. Otherwise, we couldn't get it. So. That's always been kind of woven into my DNA as an actor, as I've always kind of felt like very aware of schedule and kind of being in a hurry and, you know, and not in a good way. But that was one great thing about Adam was he kind of slowed me down and, you know, we would have, you know, a set and it would be lit and we'd be ready to shoot. And, you know, he would sit down and start kind of having a very calm conversation with me. And I'd be kind of looking around thinking, no, yeah, I definitely agree with you. You know, but thinking like, yeah, we should probably get shooting. And then, you know, I had to kind of make that adjustment to really listen and kind of be thoughtful. And he wouldn't just give me direction. He'd also ask questions and ask kind of my opinion on things. And yeah, it was definitely a new way to work for me. And after, you know, a few decades of doing this.
Of trying to do it as quickly,
as
cheaply as possible.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be glib, but I'm actually very interested in this. I know you like to go out and see the towns that you're working in, and you happen to be in one of my favorite cities in this country, Hamilton, Ontario. How is Hamilton, Ontario?
Hamilton was, I'd not been there before. And it seemed like kind of a working class town that had some really pretty parts, and then it had some parts where it kind of had that element of some downtown American cities that had kind of gotten forgotten about and left behind. But from what I hear from people here in Toronto, it's like Toronto's now become so expensive that people are kind of moving there.
Yeah, especially artists.
Yeah. And it's like downtown LA where it was kind of a wasteland, but now artists have gone there and you can get a great building and fix it up. And so, yeah, I always think it's great when those towns make a comeback. But yeah, I enjoyed being there. I always like being in a smaller town. I mean, you get so used to, Los Angeles or New York and here and, the traffic that it does kind of, force you to kind of slow down.
Though I think that Hamilton has the population of my whole home province.
It's like 500,000, I think, or a little more.
Still kind of blows me away. Can we listen to something together?
Sure.
All right. So I don't want to spook you too much with this stuff, but the kind of relationship between a father and his child became something that I thought a lot about while watching this film. So I wanted to play this for you.
From
The
The
thing that I
Shining.
was proudest of is that the station was a contender for people's attention and respect. And it was, had a tradition of running programs that in many parts of the country would not be run. And we established a tradition that the audience could make up its mind, and that we didn't feel that we had to be some sort of master censor.
Luca, what are we hearing there?
It's unbelievable. That's my dad, Bob Wilson, talking about working at Channel 13 in Dallas. But gosh, that's unbelievable to hear him. I actually would need to hear it again. I was just kind of listening to his voice. And I know he was talking about Channel 13.
I didn't mean to
but-
catch you off guard.
No,
there.
not at all. It's great to hear his voice like that, because he just died a couple of years ago.
I'm
And
so
he's one of
sorry.
those people that I think about kind of all the time, and
Yeah.
always kind of kidding around with him, kidding around about him with my brothers.
He's a good,
And-
good dude.
He was a great guy, and I just know his tone in what you just played me it's a different tone. It's him just being kind of thoughtful and kind of talking about his business. But yeah, no, that was it. Thank you for playing that.
Oh,
As
my
soon as you
God,
started playing it,
Ben tracked that down.
Oh,
and-
thanks a ton. That was another, my mind started just galloping along where I was like, gosh, I got to get a piece of this to like send my brothers.
Oh, yeah,
so maybe I get a link of
We'll
that.
get it to you afterwards. You know.
But yeah,
I mean,
he-
it'll cost you.
Yeah,
But
okay, I'll
It
definitely-
is public broadcasting.
Yeah, it shouldn't be much. I mean, I'll give a tote bag.
And I heard you brought Monty Python to.
Yeah, he worked for KERA Channel 13 in Dallas, and he worked there from about 68 to 77, and he was the president, and he wasn't that experienced, and he was hired by this guy Ralph Rogers. My dad was from Boston and had moved down out of college and just had kind of a company job and gotten to know this guy Ralph Rogers, who was a Dallas philanthropist and also a Bostonian who had hired him. And but in terms of Monty Python, my dad had this friend Ron DeVilliers, who was a really funny guy.
Yeah.
And he had a Monty Python album, and he's the one who played my dad the album, and they just thought it was unbelievable. And then they got Monty Python to actually, the troupe, all of the guys came to Dallas, and it was one of those nights my dad talked about, to us as a kid, before I was even aware of it, the night he went out with these wild guys from England, and they went to a restaurant, and he would just always say they were the funniest guys he'd ever met in his life. And that was really before I didn't know about Life of Brian or anything about him, but yeah.
It's quite a legacy. Do you think that, I don't want to overthink this too much, and I don't want to toot our own horn on public radio because this is public radio right now. But listen, your dad wasn't in, he wasn't in the pictures, like there was obviously an ideology or a humanism behind that drove him, specifically if it's public broadcasting, because frankly, it's never for the money. So I wonder if that impacted you at all in terms of your creative choices. Is there something else that needs to be there because of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's impacted me in terms of like, I'm not caught up in having hits. I mean, it's really fun to work on, big budget things. I just did a DC comic thing and really enjoyed that, but then also really enjoy, I'm about to go work in Texas on a smaller budget movie about these orphans who played football in the 1930s, and then working on, how I got my start, I feel like is very much in tune with my dad's work
What do you
ethic. Well, just the film Bottle Rocket, we'd made it as a short, and actually my dad had kind of helped us get the short made, and that he put us in touch with this guy, Kit Carson. But yeah, I definitely think my dad's work ethic, I still keep in mind. He was just a very hard-working guy, but he was also he had real enthusiasm for what he did. So the idea of doing something that I didn't care about or wasn't interested in, I was just never something that, appealed to me. And of course, some projects I felt more of a connection to than others, but always the idea of working hard and kind of putting your best foot forward is definitely something that I got from him.
I don't want to leave it just to your dad. Your mom, Laura Wilson, accomplished photographer. She's still with us, right?
She is, thanks.
How old is she?
She's going to be 80 next month.
She's gonna
We're
kill
in the
me for asking
process
that
of
question, I think.
planning her birthday right now. We've lined up a mariachi band.
Oh, that's nice.
That's as far as we've gotten at this point.
She credits you and your brothers for her career. She's quoted saying, "I had majored in painting in college, but with 3 little boys underfoot, I didn't have time to lift a paintbrush. Then a friend gave me a camera. I realized at once that the boys were perfect subjects."
Yeah, she, that's kind of, I mean, I always wonder if that's why I feel kind of semi-comfortable in front of the camera. It's just because she was, took a lot of pictures growing up, and she wasn't the kind of, I mean, it always kind of bothered me and still bothers me to this day. If you and I were sitting here talking, she wouldn't just take a picture of us talking. She would have us both turn and be posed a certain way, and she'd say, could you drop your chin? You don't look intelligent that way.
good.
Or she'd say, Luke, you need to close your mouth. You look like you've been asked a question you don't know the answer to.
That's always good.
Right,
Nonstop
but
feedback. they call it.
but yeah, she went on to work for Richard Avedon, which was also very exciting to kind of be around a really accomplished photographer like that. And my mom's gone on to have a great career of her own and had a few books published. And
Who was it who died today, Catherine? Robert Frank.
No
died today,
kidding.
Yeah.
oh gosh, the Americans, he made that iconic.
I'm sure she would have known of him or.
Oh
you know,
yeah, I mean, that's growing up, I pored over her photography books, and that's how I know that great book, The Americans. And then he made some great documentaries. He made a documentary about the Rolling Stones 1972 tour. You can't say the name, but it's something blues.
Yeah, and they didn't want it to come out. Remember?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, he was really an incredible guy, and I've got a biography of him. I haven't read it yet. It's one of those books I've been waiting to read. But gosh, that's too bad that he died. But what a career! And he has to have been well into his 80s.
Yeah,
so
he believed he
lived
was.
a good long
But what
life.
a creative. I mean, it's not really a shock that you and your brothers turned out the way you did. What a creative and altruistically creative world to grow up in, right?
Yeah, well, at the same time, it didn't feel, it wasn't like a really.
You weren't wearing berets. and
Yeah,
carrying
it
around
wasn't
baguettes
like
or
the
anything.
Royal Tenenbaums or
Yeah, right.
anything where, my dad, was a working man and getting up and going to the office. And my mom was also, a very busy mother. But also, while at the same time, I'll hear about, musicians or artists or actors where their parents weren't encouraging. And I can't imagine how, difficult that would be for a guy to want to be a painter or for a woman to want to be an actress and to not be encouraged by your parents. I'm sure in a way it can
Yeah.
help kind of spur you on and give you a thicker skin.
It's
But
risky, man. Do you have any kids?
I don't know.
It's a risky. I mean, I get it and I don't get it. Right?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, that's why still, as I get older, it impresses me even more and feel thankful that my parents were encouraging. I mean, I think it helps that, Owen and Wes Anderson, seemed, even at that young, even in their early 20s, they did seem kind of very driven and focused. They weren't flaky guys.
I want to play something else for you.
Okay.
Can you put those back on? Not as perhaps shocking this time.
So I say to the guy, "Can I get in there? I think I left my wallet." And he says, "I'm sorry, sir, we're closed for the evening." And I say, "Just for a second, do you have a lost and found?"
Yeah, that was the
something
detail
that
of
I
when
could
he goes,
check.
when Anthony goes, "Do you have a lost and found?" Then the guy listens, he opens the door, and then all of a sudden I'm in there. He's like, "What's going on?"
So that's your first role.
That's from the Bottle Rocket short.
The Bottle Rocket Show. Wes Anderson, you and your brother.
Yeah, and Andrew and Bob Musgrave, we made those guys had a script, a full-length script written, and then a guy that my dad had put us in touch with, this guy L.M. Kit Carson, who wrote Paris, Texas, and the remake of Breathless. He this is before, we'd ever heard of Sundance. He said, there's a place called Sundance and they have a shorts program. So if you guys make a self-contained short film, maybe you can get it in there. So that was our attempt at a short film to get into Sundance. And then the interesting thing about that was we made a short film, got it into Sundance. Owen and Wes went to the Sundance Screenwriters Lab, worked on the feature-length script. We got it to James L. Brooks. It was made by Columbia Pictures, and then Sundance didn't accept didn't accept the feature-length film. But yeah, I mean,
Didn't they want to cut you out of it or something like that?
no. What they wanted to do was in the negotiations after James L. Brooks and his right-hand person Polly Platt had gotten a hold of the script and wanted to make it, we were going to make it and it had gotten the green light, and then they said, okay, guys, they want to make it, but they just want to make it with other actors without you and Owen and Bob Musgrave. And I said, that seems very reasonable. Get some real actors in there. Let Wes direct it. We work on the crew. Maybe we get in the next one. And everyone was like, Luke, what the hell are you talking about? You don't, we're almost there. What do you, because I just rolled over immediately. Really, I said, yeah, let's get some good guys in there. I mean, there are plenty of people that can do this better than we can.
Oh, man.
But yeah, the guys were not very happy with me when I said, that seems great. Yeah, let's get some actors and get Ethan Hawke and Keanu Reeves and let's get this puppy made.
It'll be great. I'll take 5%. Everyone will be happy.
Yeah, I wanted to work locations.
Yeah. And did you have any idea? I mean, you can't. It seems like a dumb question to me, but like, I often think that you can know it. That like you and your brother, Wes Anderson, are all in this world right now. You must have had some kind of inkling that, oh my God, we may be pretty good at this. Or at least
No, I mean, there was
watching
just,
other movies and going like, I think our movies may be better than
maybe.
that.
I mean, I definitely feel movies were what we loved, and kind of the focus of, every weekend was how do we get into this R-rated movie or how do we get into that movie. And, as I got older, in, junior high, reading about actors I liked and then learning about directors. And then Wes and Owen were, yeah, like I said, they were just kind of very, very driven. And, but yeah, I mean, even when we made Bottle Rocket for the studio, they weren't happy for it. You could feel the vibe, like they're getting the dailies back and they're not exactly happy with what you guys are doing. And, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like I just ran into Adam Sandler, and it's so funny to see him. And I think about somebody like that who, would have been like obviously a really funny kid, but, it's like when you grow up, I'm sure you had really funny friends.
Yeah.
But would you ever think they were funny enough to be on like SCTV or Saturday Night Live?
Yeah.
And I really do then believe in that thing where a lot of it is like, timing and luck. But then, yeah, you do have to have the talent once you've got your foot in the door to kind of try and stay there.
Did you ever hear that story about Sandler that like he said, I felt like I had to be a star because I kept on telling my friends that I was going to be or I already was. Like he would be talking to his friends like, yeah, I'm going to get on Saturday Night Live. Don't worry about it. And then he was like, oh God, I got to get on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
You know what
I mean, Adam's one of those guys you can see how kind of, as funny as he is, he's really driven, and obviously it's great when you see somebody like that doing like Punch Drunk Love or like this new movie he has with the Safdie brothers, Uncut Gems, where yeah, he's just really talented. And but yeah, I don't know that it was so difficult to get the first movie made that it's like a version of PTSD for me, where I still feel kind of worried and concerned at times.
Do you get something else out of working with your brothers that maybe you don't get out of working with other people?
Well, it's funny, just when you play that clip of us from the short, I can feel Owen's tension in it, which then made me tense, and I can feel how quickly we're talking. And but yeah, I mean, I've been texting Owen since I've been here at the film festival, just saying like, I had the funniest talk with Tim Blake Nelson. We got to get in touch with him. And I ran into John Hamm, and he's such a nice guy. And then other producers and directors that we both know. And so, yeah, I think we both have always had fun going out and working with other people. And yeah, definitely, we'll work with other people and think, gosh, Owen and Andrew would really have fun working with this guy. And this, I've talked to Finn Wolfhard, who's in The Goldfinch, and he said, I just watched Bottle Rocket and loved it. And I went and watched the short film, and I was saying, you've got to meet Wes Anderson, because he seems like the kind of guy that Wes would get along with great. So yeah, I do think we do get, other things from working with other people, but at least for me, it always kind of goes back to how much I think those guys like Owen and Andrew and Wes would like these people I'm meeting.
All the way back to, I heard we were talking about the Lawn Rangers.
Yeah.
What was the Lawn Rangers?
Well, I landscaped. That was my job, and so that's what those guys kind of put into Bottle Rocket. The company was called the Lawn Rangers.
That was because you were landscaping. Right?
I was, that's what I always did in the summers and as a job once I got out of high school.
Well, you've been really generous, talking about some of these stories about your life all the way up.
It's fun, and yeah, thanks again for playing that clip of my dad. That was great to hear that.
Can you do me a favor?
Sure.
Can you tell me an old school story? Because that's kind of how I was first introduced to you. I was born in '87. I'm 32. That was the movie for me, man. Like that hit me at the exact right time, where it was just you weren't really supposed to watch it, but then you did.
Right.
You with your friends.
Right.
And you were with Will Ferrell and Vince Vaughn, like two of the funniest people.
Yeah, I mean, for me growing up, Animal House was just a huge movie, and I can remember my dad really loved Animal House, and I'd never really heard him talking about a movie before, and he went to Dartmouth, and one of the writers of Animal House, Chris Miller, was in the same fraternity my dad had been in, and in terms of funny stories about the making of Old School, I mean, like you were saying, I'd never been around anybody like Will or Vince. And, growing up being a huge Saturday Night Live fan, and again, that was something I can remember my dad and my older brothers watching that and staying up late on Saturday nights and watching that. And so for me to get the chance to work with somebody from SNL like Will Ferrell, that's the first time I thought, like I was saying earlier, like there are funny people, like you or I might have funny friends, but then there are people where you think this is a skill and a real, like an athlete.
Because he's pretty serious, hey? Like,
when
you meet him?
But then other times he's not. And I mean, I'd never been around somebody so funny to where I would really have to concentrate to not laugh during scenes. And I mean, he can just do things, with his eyes. And then, I could feel him kind of pushing me in scenes. And I would just think, I'm not going to laugh, because then you ruin the take. And then you've lost this bit of, this guy being really funny. But in terms of really funny scenes, I mean, it was more that feeling that I've only ever had a few times since, and then kind of the same thing with Adam, who I just talked about, where you're on the way to work and you're like, okay, this is going to be a fun day, where you don't always feel that way, where you're kind of pumped up to go to work. But, there's nothing more fun than being around people that are that funny.
Yeah,
and like I was saying, it's like they're like professional athletes. There's, there's being a good basketball player, like on the neighborhood court, and then there's being Michael Jordan.
I want to close out with just the one question we've been asking everybody at the end of this thing. What's a film, not the one film, but what's a film? Imagine if I just ended it like that. What's a film? What's a film that changed your life?
I mean, I don't know that I've ever had one kind of change my life, but definitely had ones that kind of really move me and that I can always kind of go back to. And also, there's a feeling of melancholy and that, gosh, you'll never get to make a movie that good, but it's almost kind of relaxing. To me, that would probably be Chinatown, to where it really seems like a novel come to life, and just everything about it is perfect, from Jack Nicholson to the names to the smaller characters, people that just have one scene, to Faye Dunaway and how she looks, and And then there are other movies like that I can just remember where I was when I saw them. Like I was just watching To Live and Die in L.A. on TV last week. And I can remember seeing that, and I'd never seen a car chase like that. And I can remember when William Peterson, who's the protagonist, the lead of the movie, gets murdered in the movie, and I'd never seen that happen. Like you don't kill the hero, during the movie. Yeah, there are quite a few movies. Like I can remember going to The Man Who Would Be King as a kid, and that would have been before I was aware of, Michael Caine was an actor and didn't know what a director was or that there was a director. Like later learning about, John Huston and his life and Walter Houston. And so there are all these kind of movies for me that that have definitely changed me and definitely affected my taste.
Hey, man, it's been nice to talk to you.
Great talking to you. Thanks for playing that clip.